Sheng Pu'er has a very characteristic taste. You can always tell it apart from green tea. But which is the difference between green tea and Sheng Pu'er? That's what this video is about. Let's find out. Hi guys, this is Gabriele from nannuoshan, where we share the pleasure of drinking and discovering genuine farm tea. If you're also looking to expand your tea knowledge and brewing skills, make sure to click on the subscribe button, and if you're enjoying what you're watching, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Today I'm drinking Pu-erh, and I'm drinking Pu-erh because I want to find inspiration. This video is about the difference between green tea and Sheng Pu'er. Any Pu-erh lover can tell green tea from Sheng Pu'er apart. And usually I tell you even more, people that like Sheng Pu'er, that are really into Sheng Pu'er, don't tend to be very much into green tea. But have you ever asked yourself which is the difference between the two? So if you really have to list the differences, well, I asked myself that question, and I thought if I want to answer it quite clear, I just see how green tea is done, see how Sheng Pu'er is done, and I see which are the differences, right? Because as you know, the 6 tea categories, or 7, are distinguished from each other based on the processing of the tea leaves. So we've done even a short video about that. And if we want to recall how actually green tea is done, well, you know that green tea, the leaves meant to become a green tea, the first thing you do, you heat up the leaves. You kill the green, how the Chinese say, shaching, and you do that to stop those enzymatic reactions that would cause oxidation of the leaves turning brown. That's why you call it green tea. Well, after the heating, after they kill the green, you do shaping. You do shape the leaves in the form that you want, depending on the type of tea. And finally, a step that you have to do with every tea, you go and dry the leaves so that they can be preserved over time. Sometimes though, before these 3 steps, you do one at the very beginning, and it is withering. There are tea factories that first of all wither the leaves a little bit, and only then go on with heating, shaping and drying. So now that we know, for a second I thought I had water inside, now that we know how actually green tea is done, we have to go a little bit more into details, because there are several ways of killing the green, of shaping the leaves and so on, and we want to look at those. So kill the green, you have at least 3, I would say, main methods for killing the green, shaching. One is to use hot air, which for example like putting simply the leaf in an oven at high temperature, so you use hot air to dry the leaves. In Chinese, this is called hongqing, I think is the right tone. And yeah, another way, what you can do, you can fry or roast or stir fry the leaves in a wok, for example, or in a drum if the quantity is much larger. And in that case, in Chinese it's called chaoqing. It is this process of frying and roasting the leaves. You have also another very famous method that most of you are waiting, and it is steaming. Steaming is very popular in Japan nowadays, but it is still done also in China. For example, for a famous tea, fairly famous, that is called Anshi Yulu. And in Chinese, steaming the leaves is called zhengqing. And in addition to these 3 main traditional methods, you have also more modern methods. I've seen also microwaves and even infrared applied to provide energy to the leaves and stop that enzymatic moment. But there is no really a traditional name for it. This is more modern style, microwaving and infrared that we are not looking into today. Because we are looking at tradition, right? When Sheng Pu'er was first done, there was no infrared. All right, now let's speak about the shaping. Shaping, it's zuoxing in Chinese, can be done in also a variety of ways. I would say the two are the main one. One is again frying and roasting the leaves in a wok, so you can really shape the leaves while working them with your hands in the wok, or you can use machine that kind of simulate the same effect that your hands would have on the leaves. Another way of doing it is by rolling the leaves. So you really heavily roll the leaves, again by hand, or you can use some rolling machines. And that is in Chinese is rou nian. I'm really bad with accent. And this is another method for shaping the leaves. We said heating, kill the green. We said shaping. Let's look at drying. Which are the methods for drying the leaves? One we have actually already mentioned, and is again using hot air. You can put your leaves in an oven, or you can use some high temperature dryer, like big boxes with high temperature that simply dry the leaves. Or you can again fry and roast the leaves, as we have said. Again, you can use the wok or you can use the machine for completing the drying. Sometimes it's done in one, right? For example, for lunging, you would fry, roast the leaves in the wok, and then you just continue until the leaves are dry. So you can combine also these few steps. And another method is sun drying, which is xiaoqing. At the end, the drying in an oven with hot air is a little bit a simulation of drying at the air outside under the sun. So you have again these three main methods for drying green tea. Depending, on the tradition, the local tradition, on which type of tea it is, you can find pretty much everything. And you know that the results can be drastically different, right? If you take a sencha, takes very different than a classic Maozian from China, for example. All right, now that we know how green tea is produced, let's have a look at the production of Sheng Pu'er and let's see what are the differences. So, when the leaves are first harvested in Yunnan for producing Sheng Pu'er, there is a withering. The withering is always there and remove a little bit of water content from the leaves. Then the next step that is done, you basically stir fry the leaves. You fry, you roast the leaves. If you have small batches, few kilos at once, you do that in a wok by hand. If you have larger quantity, you can use a drum so that you have less labor intensive, but of course you have also a little bit less feeling and less control on the final result. And as far as shaping is concerned, what you do with Pu'erh, you roll the leaves. So the leaves are rolled again either by hand, I've done it even myself, or by machine to simplify things. And that's why Pu'erh, even Maocha, have always a little bit twisted leaves because they tend to be rolled. They are just rolled to shape the leaves, that give them the final shape. And then, which is the traditional way of drying Sheng Pu'er, it is sun drying. That doesn't mean that that's the way that is done everywhere, just because it is, it requires quite some time to dry at the sun, and also you need sun on that day, so sometimes also hot air dryers are used, but let's stick to the traditional method, that is sun drying. So at this point, we said after withering, we are going to heat the leaves, so actually kill the green, we fry and roast the leaves, we're going to shape them, we are rolling them, and we're going to dry them at the sun. But hold on, that's just, didn't we say just before that that's one way of doing green tea? So actually all this process, it sounds to me that is quite similar to just being a green tea. So what's the difference? What's the point? Because guys, I know when you taste a Sheng Pu'er, it tastes fairly different than a green tea. So do I have to cancel this video? Well, as a matter of fact, there is not so much a difference between Sheng Pu'er and green tea. As a matter of fact, Sheng Pu'er belongs very well to that wide definition of green teas. We have many different green teas, thousands of them, that encompasses really a huge array of shape, color, and taste. And if you take a sencha and you take a longin, they taste very, very different, yeah? And maybe I could even say that the sencha is more different than a longin than the difference between a bilwachun, for example, and a Sheng Pu'er, that are both a little bit bitter and quite complex and intense. It's not the same thing, but you know, green tea is a big category. Now, yeah, you could simplify that, and maybe at this point I should change the title of the video and not ask myself which is the difference, but try explain why they are the same thing, or better, not why they are the same thing, but why Sheng Pu'er is nothing else than a type of green tea. But nonetheless, there are differences. Why people distinguish the two? Well, first of all, there are tiny differences, or maybe not the tiny differences in the processing. We have spoken about kill the green, but kill the green can be done different duration. You can heat up the leaves for different duration, and you can do it at different temperature. And there is the tendency to use maybe a little bit lower temperature and a little bit shorter time for Pu'er, for Sheng Pu'er, than what do you do for a classic green tea. So you can say that in a way, maybe the shaching that is going to stop that oxidation is not complete. Another aspect is that sometimes, Pu'er have a residual moisture content in the leaves after drying that is higher than a classic green tea. And this can be in the matcha, but is a classic example on also when you go ahead and press the leaves into a cake, because then you go and steam the leaves before pressing, and then the follow-up drying process might not be so much drying as actually you would do with the final processes of green tea. So you might have a little bit of moisture content that, as you know, water causes oxidation, right? And would induce a little bit more change into the leaves, yeah? But when you think about, you can also say the Sheng Pu'er is often drunk aged, while green tea is exactly the opposite. You want it fresh. That's the difference. But I have to say, I have tasted very old green tea, like 20-25 years old green tea, and yeah, they were tasty. I liked them, and they were not classic Pu'er taste. You know, they were not aged tea. They had their own taste. And also, there are also green tea that are pressed. When you can go back to the Tang Dynasty and have those cha bing that were pressed at that time, but there was also different processing. But no one could prevent you to press a green tea. You know, nowadays people press black tea, they press white tea. You can press also green tea. So, I think the reason why Sheng Pu'er is considered actually substantially different than green tea has not so much to do with the processing itself, has more to do with the history. Has more to do with the hype that has been happening, it just occurred over the past 20, 30, 40 years about Pu'er. And when something within a category become extremely famous and before was barely consumed, because we have to remember back in the days, no one would really drink raw Pu'er. Raw Pu'er in Yunnan, people were not drinking it, were drinking, their green tea or something else, but they were not drinking Pu'er. It was for friends, for export. And by the time the tea over land, over sea transportation would arrive at the country of destination, would have already been kind of aged. And those places that were used to consume Pu'er tended also to store it farther before consumption. So there was no such a thing like really drinking fresh Sheng Pu'er like this one. And by the time that this new hype in the 90s of Sheng Pu'er really came to place, then it became so famous that you had really to allocate a name and a category on its own in a way, and that's why you barely find in any shop, including nannuoshan, we have Sheng Pu'er in a different category. Yeah, we don't put it with heicha because we don't consider it heicha, but it has its own category, because I mean, if I put it in green tea, you probably won't find it, right? But at the very end, I have to say, to me, Sheng Pu'er, strictly speaking, is just a type of green tea that has a lot of peculiarity, a lot of own characteristic that make it really, really peculiar one. Yeah, we have listed some, you know, the shachin being incomplete, the high moisture content in the leaves, the fact that it has to come from Yunnan, it is usually pressed. So all these things together is done with the Samika variety, so only with large leaves variety, and so on and so forth. And yeah, all these things make it a little bit peculiar. Also, if you want the fact that we say sun drying, but if you harvest the tea in the morning and then you do all this processing, kill the green, shaping during the day, by the end of the day it's too late, you cannot put it under the sun. So usually when you do sun drying of a pu'er, you do it under the sun the next day. But well, now you're already the next day. Well, usually green tea has to be done, you know, all in one shot, because you want to dry it as soon as possible so that you really stop every oxidation and process. Well, often, yeah, it's the case that just Sheng Pu'er is left there overnight after the shaping, and then is dried the next day at the sun. Like traditionally, the farmer would go out and spread the leaves on their front yard, and just let the sun do doing his job. Yeah. Did I forget the brew? Of course, I did, but not too bad. Not too bad. Hopefully it's not oversteeped. Probably it is. But yeah, that's my 2 cents about Sheng Pu'er and green tea. I totally understand those that really would like to distinguish and that see in all those differences or peculiarities, not differences, a reason for making it a category on its own. Understandable, you can say both. But what I would say that if you start really looking at the differences with green tea, you have at least very hard time in finding characteristics that are only to be found in green tea, and at least one of them not also in any other tea that you find everywhere else in the world. If you are interested in all those historical aspects that really made over the past century, but in particular over the past decades, Sheng Pu'er so peculiar and deserving a category on its own, there is a video that we have done already about that, and I don't think there is a lot to add to that. So just go ahead and have a look at that video while I keep on drinking my Sheng Pu'er. I hope you have enjoyed this content. If so, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and go ahead, subscribe our channel if you haven't done it so, because every week video like this, done by me, done by other, every time about tea will come your way. Thank you very much, and I will see you the next time. Cheers, guys.